This is Sawyer Robertson, and you're listening to the Bearcast on SicEm365.com.
Welcome into the Bearcast on SicEm365.com, presented by WellMed Medical Management and Barefoot Campus Outfitter. Head on over to Barefoot Campus Outfitter in Waco, or go to the website and use SicEm365 as your code to save 20% off your purchase. Today, Colt, Barber, and I are going to go through our best bets in the Big 12. But first, we start off, like we do every single week, with a recap of how badly things went the week before. Colt, you had a 1-3 week. The misses included Arizona State at Utah under 48. They scored 52 points in that one. Utah scored 42 of those points. BYU at Arizona, you took Arizona plus 1.5. They lost a really, really competitive game, 33-27. Ends up being a miss there. And then you took Iowa State minus 2.5 at Colorado. Colorado ends up winning that one 24-17. Your hit on the week was the Baylor or the TCU at Kansas State game over 55.5. 41-28 was the score there. So an easy hit. 1-3 on the week, 14-13 on the year. How are you feeling?
Yeah, I mean, the one that really hurt, which we picked these games, I believe, before we knew Sam Leavitt was for sure out.
Yeah.
If he's playing and they're able to ball control at all, but they weren't this game, Utah scoring 42 points was not what I expected at all. They weren't able to hold on to the ball, and that one hurt. That would only put me 2-2 in the week, but at least I'm still, plus one on the season. But I think in that game, I'm going to look. Yeah, well, actually, they did ball control. Arizona State had 36 time of possession, 23. They just weren't able to move the ball up and down the field. So they took their time. Yards per pass. Any guesses without looking for Arizona State? We know Jeff Sims is bad. But
horrible. Three yards per pass.
3.3. 3.3. So that's not what I was expecting in that game. So, yeah, they just kind of gave their way to Utah in that game and cost me one. So 52 points, but 42 of those went to Utah.
So, Colt, we'll go through my week here, but I just want to say this was the most frustrating week possible. I hit rock bottom this week, 1-3, but man, the misses were excruciating. So here we go. Kansas at Texas Tech. I took the over 59.5. This game had like 30 something points at halftime. It ends up being 42-17 and a miss by half a point. UCF at Cincinnati. I took Cincinnati minus 10.5. Cincinnati was up by 3 scores for like the entire game. UCF scores in the final 2 minutes, and then they make it even worse. They go for 2, so I still have a chance to somehow cover this, but they get the 2-point conversion. They end up losing 20-11, which is not
weird game. Weird game.
Very weird. And then Iowa State at Colorado, I took over 52.5. Final score is 24-17. Another miss, but a lot of points left on the table by both teams, honestly. And then the hit was TCU at Kansas State over 55.5, 41-28. So that was a hit. 1-3 on the week, 12-16 on the year. Has to flip at some point. These half-a-point losses are piling up for me this year.
Yeah, that's why Vegas does what they do, and not because they're just so great, but they can get it in that, make it a tough decision for you and for the better, and that's why you're basically 500 for the entire season. I mean, both of us. I don't know what your overall record is, but puts you right there at you're either up a little or down a little, and they're making money off everybody.
Yes, they are. I need to get back to 500. I'm 4 below at the moment, so I gotta make up some ground here, but. Colt, why don't you start us off this week? Where do you want to begin?
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to start, and this one's tough for me to pick because we don't really know the health of the 2 quarterbacks in this game. Baron Morton got dinged up at the end of the game last week against Kansas, or really the second half. Sam Leavitt, he's probably playing at this point. The line's 7.5, but from what I saw last week against Utah, from Arizona State, I don't think that Arizona State's defense is going to hold up even at home against Texas Tech. And I don't know if Sam Leavitt's dealing with a foot injury whenever it happened. That's the biggest part of his game. And he's a good quarterback. He can throw the football, but it's usually he's scrambling around making plays. If his foot's not healthy, I just don't see how they're keeping up in a game like this. So I have Tech covering the 7.5 point line.
Okay, I think that's probably the side that I would lean to, but that's not the side I'm going to take in this game. I have a bet on this one too. It's actually going to be the under 52.5. I think all the uncertainty with these quarterbacks is going to lead to this being a lower scoring game. I actually trust both these defenses. I know Arizona State got just demolished by Utah, but I think that was more of a function of their offense just not being able to gain any momentum in that game, and your defense just struggling in that regard. I think Tech's offense is good. I think their numbers are slightly inflated by the teams that they've gotten to play this year. I think they might be in a situation where they settle for field goals in this game because their red zone offense hasn't been as elite or as sharp as one would probably think, given how easily they've won a lot of games this year. I think Arizona State's going to try to run the football, try to take the air out of the ball a little bit. So I think in general, I think this kind of bodes pretty well for the under here. I think both defenses will have some success. Ultimately, I do think Tech wins the game, if anyone has a question about that, but I do think under 52.5 is where I sit on this one.
Yeah, I mean, I think it makes sense because of how Arizona State's going to want to play and how Tech has shown its defense has the capability of playing. I think Kansas exposed it a little bit, but they still only gave up 17 points in that game. And so, yeah, I'm intrigued by this one, not as intrigued as I was a couple of weeks ago, because Arizona State's. If you listen to their Dillingham's pressers, he's been talking about it for multiple weeks of just how beat up they are. And I don't know if they have all of their offensive linemen back for this game, but at one point they're like down 2 or 3 offensive linemen. And that's not going to go very well against Tech's defensive front.
Real quick, Sawyer Robertson has something to remind you about.
Want the latest information about your favorite team? Try out SIGM 365 premium content the next 3 months for just $5 by clicking the link below.
And now back to the Bearcast. Absolutely not. All right. So my second bet of this week, we're going to go to Stillwater. Cincinnati travels to Oklahoma State. Cincinnati is a 21.5 point favorite. The over-under is 58.5. I'm going to take the under 58.5 here. I think we just saw Cincinnati kind of come out with a game plan against UCF of kind of just taking care of the football, moving the ball, some playing good defense, just trying to play some complimentary football. They end up winning that game easily, but they didn't score a lot. I think this game's going to be similar to that. The 21.5 number is tempting. It's just massive, and I don't think that many points will be scored in this game. But if you look at something where it's like Cincinnati 37, Oklahoma State, 13 or something along those lines. That's kind of what I'm looking at in this game. I think that Cincy will probably try to hold some things back before they start facing even more tougher competition going forward. And Oklahoma State, I think, is just kind of a dead man walking. I just don't think they're going to score a lot of points in this game. And so I think Cincinnati just uses ball control here. They run the football and they just kind of walk away with an easy win.
Yeah, that Cincy's really becoming more intriguing to me because they beat Iowa State, which we know Iowa State's not what they were. But in the second half of the Iowa State game, they scored 7 points. And then against UCF, who we've seen struggle, Kansas State put up a ton of points on them in that game. So it's the end of the Iowa State game, second half, and then the entirety, they've only scored 27 points in 6 quarters. And for that Cincy offense, coming into at the end of the Iowa State game, you're thinking they're going to score a lot of points. So I actually really like the under here too, because is there something to this the current Cincy trend, especially with UCF controlling the time of possession? They had almost 40 minutes of time of possession just to keep Cincy off. And that's kind of been the Achilles heel of Cincinnati to this point of the season, is if they're not able to get off the field, is their offense going to be able to score points? What's going to happen in these games? And we've seen it over the last 6 quarters. They're in like a weird funk right now. So I'm curious if they come out of it in this game. I mean, Oklahoma State's not very good, so I don't know if it's going to tell us much, but something to watch at least if they struggle to score against Oklahoma State.
Yeah, I think they're going to score in the 30s, but the problem is I don't think Oklahoma State's going to score more than 20. So that's kind of where.
Yeah, no, I don't see that either, especially if Flores isn't playing.
Right, exactly. All right, Colt, where are we going to next?
Yeah, so I'm going to kind of ride that Tech or the Utah Arizona State game a little bit here. I like BYU's defense, and I like Utah's defense against a young quarterback at BYU. Obviously, one thing that's going against me here is that we saw BYU give up 24 or whatever it was to West Virginia. But I really like the under in this game, under 49.5 between BYU and Utah. It just seems like a spot where you have two defenses that don't like each other, two fan bases that don't like each other. I don't know. I haven't really looked back at the trends of these games, but I suspect they've all been fairly low scoring. And so I like this game being under 49.5. Maybe you have a 20-10, 24-17 type game, and so you're staying right underneath that under. But yeah, I just don't think either one of these teams are going to want to go and score a lot of points in this game. They're going to try to win it with their defense.
I like that a lot. That's kind of what if I were picking the over under, that's what I would be looking at. But I'm going to play with the just kind of the spread here. I like BYU plus 3.5. I think that Utah is the better football team, but road underdog by 3.5 points in a rivalry game, that feels like a lot of points going into this matchup. I think it's probably going to be a 3-point game either way. And so I'm getting, 3.5 with BYU. I feel pretty good about that. And so I just think both these teams are going to have trouble scoring. We know who BYU is in Provo. Like, they are very, very tough to beat there. I know the crowd's going to be, split. There's going to be a lot of Utah fans there, but I think BYU is going to provide a really unique atmosphere. Utah, I think, still has some flaws, and I think BYU's defense will be able to expose some of those. And then I think BYU's offense will probably struggle, but I think they'll do enough to be in a close competitive game with Utah. So I'm going to take BYU plus 3.5. And I am kind of shocked that the line's that big for a game between two ranked teams on the road. Just not a lot of faith in BYU, I guess, from people yet, but there will be after this one.
Yeah, I mean, if they do have a decent game, win or lose, if this is a competitive game, it solidifies BYU. Because my question marks around BYU is like, who have you played? And truly, at this point, you've played Colorado, a game that you probably should have lost, West Virginia, and Arizona. And your F plus average offensive space is 66.25. That excludes Stanford, and then defensive space is 56.8. So Utah's at least faced Texas Tech at this point, and we kind of know a little bit about them. And I guess Utah, who else did they face? Arizona State, which they thumped them. I just think we know more about Utah at this point. I couldn't pick. I mean, I guess you can say BYU can cover this and still lose, but that's just a tight game to pick. So that's why I'm staying away from it in terms of the line.
Makes sense. All right, Colt, I guess our last game left here. Or no, you have one more. You have one more game left.
Straightforward. UCF, West Virginia, over 46.5. I was really actually leaning towards the under on this. I thought, under makes sense. But then I look at what these teams have actually done, and 46.5 just seems low considering I think West Virginia's defense is pretty meh. Like, I don't think they're a good defense, but they turned around offensively and put up 24 against BYU, who some believe is a really good defensive BYU team. So I just think there's a sneaky, like, getting to 48 is not unreasonable, maybe 50. Especially if you get down late in this game and it's close, you might go to overtime and you're getting that plus some. So I think I wanted to play the under, like I mentioned, but I think it's a sneaky over just from really a game that both of these teams probably feel like they can win, and they're going to do everything they can to win it.
I would be with you there. I do think that this game trends more towards the over. I think both these teams are going to score in the 20s, and then there's some upside there for them to maybe score a little bit more. I think a very likely score is something like 27-20 or, 30-24, which both those hit the over. I think that makes a lot of sense. In this matchup, it should be, a rather interesting one. Both these teams need to win that game because there aren't a lot of opportunities left on their schedule to get wins. Right, yeah. Okay, Colt, let's move into the Baylor at TCU game. TCU is a 2.5-point favorite. The over-under 65.5. What direction are you going with that one?
Yeah, I'm just staying away from the emotional win or lose bet on this one, just because it's easy for me just to pick Baylor. It's a 2.5-point line at the time of recording this, and it's easy for me to say, oh yeah, Baylor's going to win on the road. I'm going to stay away from that. I'm going to go to over 65.5. That's the more logical, using my head type bet. Like, at this point, neither one of these defenses just shown, okay, we're going to go out and not allow points, however that might be, special teams, defense, or turning the ball over on offense and just giving up points. So I think that this game trends towards the over. We saw it last year. It was 37-34 on the last second kick, but it was over before the last second kick. It was already at 68 before that last 3 points. The only fear I have is that Baylor comes out and runs the football and TCU comes out and the clock keeps moving because Hoover has a lot of easy completions underneath a defense that's trying to take the explosive play away. That's my biggest fear in this game, but I think that you get late, the offenses speed up in a close game. They're trying to get points to win it or to catch up in instances, and it goes ultimately for the over. But we might see a sneaky good, low possession, high efficiency game early on, and then the points come late.
Yeah, I mean, I could see that. I think that the thing that is kind of on my mind here is how close a lot of these games have been when these two teams have kind of been at the same level. And so I'm going to take the team that's getting points here. So I'm going to take Baylor plus 2.5. Even if they lose this game, it doesn't matter. I think it'll be close. Yeah, I'd like it to be 3. That would be nice. But 2.5 still feels pretty around what I'm thinking, whether it's a game-winning field goal or a team playing from behind, scoring a touchdown to cut it to 2, late in the game, or cut it to 1 late in the game. I think all of that is in play. So for that reason, I'm going to take Baylor plus 2.5. I like that in a rivalry game situation for the game to be really close. And I think I feel more confident about that. The risk for me with the over-under here is that it is a rivalry game, and I could see just some funky things happening and it ended up hitting the under somehow. I mean, I think TCU and SMU hit the under in their game, and that definitely shouldn't have hit the under. And so I think that that's kind of in the range of outcomes in this game if both teams start turning the ball over or something along the lines of that game happens, because that's what happened in the SMU game. It was like turnover in the end zone, touchdown called back in the end zone, missed field goals. Like, it was all of the things that led to that hitting the under. So I'm just going to take Baylor plus 2.5 because I do feel like it's going to be a close game for both these teams, and the winner is going to be close regardless.
Yeah, that game that you referenced, SMU and TCU. So in the fourth quarter alone, it was 24-21, and that was early in the fourth quarter. TCU scores to make it 28-24, and then the last 2 possessions of the game for SMU are interceptions. So 5 plays, 10 yards interception, 4 plays, 29, which they're playing. It was 35-24 at that point because TCU goes up. But that game was and that just capitalized on a game that had some weird stuff happen. And so, you never know in the rivalry games, but any game in general, like, things can cause those to happen. I just like the trend of these two offenses, plus some defensive struggles in general. And maybe you sneak a special teams or an overtime game that gives them we've seen 2 of those in recent years, 2019 and then 24. What was the overtime game? There's a double 2015. Yeah.
2015. There you go.
Yeah. So, and then the rain
rain
game, double overtime there. And then 2019 was a triple overtime game, but all of them we've talked about it besides 2017, 2023, when Baylor was just bad,
and 2016.
That's like completely obsolete in my mind. That was another one of those where Baylor was just at that point of the season was bad.
Yeah, they were 6-1, but yeah.
Well, we know in retrospect we know how that all went. But yeah, they have to play games, or the games that they play are relatively close. And I mean, I think if you exclude the 23 game, I think it was like the exact points and points allowed in these was like 119-119. Like, it's been that close. And so I expect this one and 2 evenly matched teams to be pretty close. And it shows that Vegas thinks that the exact same thing is going to be relatively close.
Definitely. So we'll see how it all plays out on Saturday. A lot of intriguing games in the Big 12 this week, and hopefully we'll get some more information about who the real contenders are after this weekend. But that's all for this week. Thanks for listening. This has been the Bearcast on SicEm365.com.
Join Sikkim 365 Premium on a $1 for 1 month trial to read our experts' notes and insights. Know about high school commits, off-season transfers, coaching staff changes, and so much more before the rest. Also, download the Sikkim 365 app on your iPhone today to get instant notifications of breaking news, read up on the latest inside info, easily interact with other Baylor fans on our forums, and get alerts for anything published by your favorite staff members.